In this lecture, we will be learning about the sacred music of the Renaissance style period. Renaissance sacred music often used two common types of sacred works that we will discuss further in future slides, the motet and the mass. The church choirs at this time were all male. High voices were sung by adult males in a falsetto voice or by choir boys. Beginning in 1565, castrados, castrated males, were introduced into the papal chapel mainly as a money-saving measure. A single castrato could produce as much volume as two falsettists or 3 to 4 boys. Surprisingly, castrato sopranos remained a hallmark of the papal chapel until 1903, when Pope Pius X officially banned them. During the Renaissance, women were not allowed to appear in public to sing, whether in church or theatrical productions. Women were allowed to sing in convents or secular music making at court and at home. In the Renaissance, the motet became a sacred form with a single Latin text for use in the Mass and other religious service. Motets in praise of the Virgin Mary were common because there were large numbers of religious groups across Europe who were devoted to her worship. These motets were usually written for 3 or 4 voices and based on a chant. Melody or other cantus firmus. Josquin du Pré, known as Josquin, was a Franco-Flemish composer who served for much of his career in Italy. Josquin was employed at ducal courts in Milan and Ferrara, the Sistine Chapel in Rome, and the French court of Louis XII. Known for his sacred and secular music, Josquin wrote 18 masses, 100 motets, and 70 secular vocal works. His works are known for their use of continuous imitation, borrowing popular songs for the cantus firmus, and weaving symbolic devices within the music. Ave Maria Virgo Serena is an example of Josquin's use of voices and textures. The piece is a rhymed prayer to the Virgin Mary, written for a 4-voice a cappella choir. Listen for high and low voices in the melody singing in pairs. The rhythm is duple with a shift to triple, then back. The cadences are hollow sounding. The texture is primarily imitative, interspersed with homorhythmic sections. The form is sectional according to the stanzas of poetry. The final personal plea from the composer is in a very simple texture. Listen to this motet by Josquin. Composers in the Renaissance concentrated their musical settings on the ordinary or fixed portions of the Mass that were sung daily. The 5 movements of the ordinary of the Mass are the Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, and Agnus Dei. Originally, these movements were sung in Latin, but now are recited or sung in the vernacular, the language of the country. Early polyphonic settings of the Mass were often based on a fragment of Gregorian chant that became the fixed voice, or cantus firmus, that was the foundation of the work. Sometimes popular songs were used as a basis for a Mass. Guillaume Dufay was a Burgundian or French composer and expert in canon law. Dufay worked in church and court positions all over Europe, including working several years at the Papal Chapel in Rome. Dufay wrote sacred and secular music and is most well known for his L'Homme Armé. This work was based on the popular tune, The Armed Man, and Dufay used the tune to unify the piece. Listen first to the French popular song, The Armed Man, and then to Dufay's Kyrie from the Armed Man Mass. On October 31st, 1517, an Augustinian monk named Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Castle Church at Wittenberg, Germany. This was the first defiant act in what was to become the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther and others sought to bring an end to the persistent corruption within the Roman Catholic Church. In regards to music, the changes sought were no more musical instruments in the church, no more secular tunes in polyphonic masses, and no more merry church singers. While Martin Luther was excommunicated for his act, the Catholic Church eventually responded with its own reform movement, the Counter-Reformation. The Council of Trent was a long committee meeting that sought to regulate many things, including church music. They wanted to ban music or limit it to Gregorian chant because of corruption of the chant by embellishment, the use of certain instruments in religious services, the incorporation of popular music in masses, the secularism of music, and the irreverent attitude of church musicians. The council sought a pure vocal style that respected the integrity of the sacred text. Palestrina wrote pieces that reflected the council's desire for a clear projection of the sacred text. Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina, referred to as Palestrina, was an Italian composer, organist, and choirmaster. For a short time, he was a member of the Sistine Chapel Choir. His output was mostly sacred, including over 100 masses, 250 motets, and many other sacred works. He also wrote madrigals, which were secular. Palestrina's Pope Marcellus Mass was originally thought to have been written to satisfy the Council of Trent's recommendations for polyphonic church music. However, this work was written several years prior to the Council of Trent's recommendations on music. It is written for an a cappella 6-voice part, all-male church choir common to the era. The highest voice parts were sung by boy sopranos, male falsettists, men singing in falsetto or high voice. The alto part was by male altos or countertenors, tenors with very high voices. The opening line, Gloria in excelsis Deo, is sung monophonically by the officiating priest. Choral sections are polyphonic and balanced so that the text is clear and audible. Listen to Palestrina's Gloria from Pope Marcellus Mass. Once finished with this presentation, proceed to the Renaissance secular music presentation.